everybody. I would like to thank Palexpo for this opportunity for conducting what is going to be today the second roundtable on NFT. I just concluded one with experts on the NFT, and we describe the industry, the opportunities, and this roundtable is going to be more focused in the technology, in the tokenization processes, like what we call tokenomics, and cryptocurrencies, which are essential access for a successful NFT deployment. So I have the pleasure to have with me a very prestigious group of experts. By the way, some of them, they are coming from the United States. It's very early in the morning, so I thank for that effort, particularly Ashok and Ralph. So I know how difficult it is to wake up in the middle of the night to do a Zoom. So thank you very much, guys, for your support. So maybe so we go directly to the subject. I mean, what we are trying to understand in this roundtable is what is the requirements in terms of technology that needs to happen in order to do a successful NFT. Successful means that it's secure, that it cannot be copied, that has possibility to be dual, means coming from the object or from the artwork. It can be transactional. It can be protecting the investors through KYC compliant processes. So only only authorized capital and clean money can be piped through the process. So organizations such as the Red Cross or other can use for philanthropic reasons. So that's a bit the idea of this roundtable today. We have the pleasure to have with us also Philippe Stool, a representative from the Geneva International Committee from the Red Cross in Geneva, which is going to explain us also what they are thinking in terms of using this amazing technology as a way of funding some of their operations. So maybe I will start with Chris. Maybe first introduce yourself, just maybe 1 or 2 minutes, who you are, what is your focus on NFT, and what is your experience, and then I will go into a Q&A process. We also have Q&A possibilities from the audience. So the audience, we have around 250 people on the webinar register. So we encourage them to use the Q&A facility so they can engage directly with the speakers. If you want to react to those questions directly, you can do that, or you can bring those questions to the panel and we will debate them. So yeah, maybe Chris, I start with you introducing yourself, and then Amir, Jose, Ashok, Ralph, and Philip. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, thank you very much, Carlos. It's a pleasure to be here. I am an old-time nerd researching artificial intelligence and data for more than 30 years now. And I have come to this topic of NFTs and blockchain from the side on the question of how do we make this stuff secure, and how do we work with this on the data pane. And this, I think, is very interesting. We've seen a lot of ideas on how to create a digital twin. And with my new role as CTO of WiseKey, we finally have all the things that come together, that we don't just have the ability to mint something on a blockchain, but actually guarantee the authenticity of what we're doing, put the information that you need to track an object with the object or with the virtual object, and also allow reusage contracts. So this is the current project that we're working on, and I think it's super interesting to take the hot air out of all this NFT things, because the idea of having a copy of the real world in the digital world, or having digital objects even seep into the real world, is fantastic. It allows for additional culture, it allows for additional monetization, it allows for art and business cases that haven't been there before. But we need to have a strong connection. Otherwise, if the real world and the virtual world totally diverge, we're living in a fantasy, and that can never work on a market. And this is what I'm working for in terms of A, technology, make it secure, and B, the tokenization to get that in sync.
Thank you, Grace. Amir?
Thanks a lot, Chris. So if I can just add on, I'm also coming from a research perspective. I've been studying in Frankfurt, in Singapore, in California, in Münster, where I'm also currently handing in my PhD thesis. So what we are taking a look at is the new market actors entering this new blockchain based platform economy, like liquidity providers, and also the novel pricing mechanisms which are now possible. So now you've got basically a different set of groups changing the arena as we had it before. So it's a very interesting part of participating in, and we've been working on different projects in the blockchain space. So we had very nice discussions already in art and luxury goods. I'm looking forward to also explore other use cases and to talk about the technology over here. What is the right technology? How do we get there? And what actually exists already on the market? So that's it from me, and I also thank you a lot.
Thank you, Amir. Just Oracle.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those somewhere else. Joost Volker, I'm leading blockchain for EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and Oracle, business development director. I've been involved in this from the moment actually that Oracle came to market with this blockchain platform. In 2016, we started with that, Hyperledger based. So I've been involved in most of our blockchain projects so far. And like with Chris, I have I'm a technologist by heart. I did graduate in AI machine learning back in the early 90s. So also like 30 years ago, always been close to what I call emerging technologies. So I like that, but also I think the link with the business, and as well for today, I would like definitely take some answer and give a view on why is Oracle in this actually, and what is the enterprise use of tokenomics? How could it work out? Because I think that's where we would definitely see after the first, I think Chris mentioned hot air, definitely some hot air, but I think now it's air that we need to breathe, and we also have to bring into the enterprises, into the B2B and the B2B2C world to see how it could work out and make this indeed a new economical vehicle for companies to explore.
Thank you very much, Just. Ashok?
Thanks, Carl. Glad to be here, part of this amazing panel, which is going to discuss about NFTs and tokenomics and cryptocurrencies. I'm one of those who's joining from US, so there is Kevin helping me to make sure that I have my energy levels high. So my name is Ashok. I'm Director of Professional Services for Casper Labs, and Casper Labs is one of is focused on enterprise grade solutions, and as Volker just mentioned, right? The NFTs are kind of making this transition from B2C to B2B areas now, and this focus on enterprise grade solutions is what we are looking at. We have been working with WiseKey and a few others to provide the underlying layer 1 technology for efficient implementations of NFTs. Glad to be here discussing with all of you.
Thank you, Ashok. Ralph? Good morning.
Good morning to all. Thank you very much for having me. So my name is Ralph, and I'm co-founder and CEO of ScaleSwap. It's an IDO launchpad, which doesn't say most likely too much to most of you. So it's kind of a Kickstarter for blockchain-based startups. I think this is the most brief and generic description I can give. I'm coming originally from the corporate world, and then management and SAP consulting area. And I founded my own company, my first company in 2012. And since then, I'm a full-time entrepreneur, but also partially then board member and advisor to a lot of startups. And since close to 5 years, I'm full-time in the blockchain space. working with a lot of innovative startups, but also organizations and service providers. And yeah, I had my first touch points with NFTs back in mid 2019. This was a gaming NFT, which I bought on OpenSea. I had a look at my email history. So I had pretty early touch points also with NFTs. But other areas where I'm very close with is the fundraising mechanisms and the market itself of startups, but also of the crypto market, token economics, token metrics, but also decentralized governance, DAOs. They also play in the meantime a very essential role in the whole DeFi and NFT world. Yeah, these are the focus areas, let's say, from my side.
Thank you, Ralph. Very impressive. So, Philip.
Hi, everyone. Very pleased and very happy to be joining this techie geek world that is quite far from my own background and my own history. So forgive me in advance if I say things that are totally trivial. But my background is the Humanitarian Action. I've been working for the International Committee of the Red Cross for now the last 18 years, was based in the field in different places. And one of my main area of work is how we can build trust with armed groups, with affected people, with governments, so that we could work. The ICRC doesn't have any mean to impose its presence, so it's about just gaining the trust. And now I'm based in Geneva, and we are transferring the trust in the real world into the trust into the more virtual world. We know that the humanitarian action is going to evolve, and my role is to try to explore, understand, and relate to our traditional work. But I'm sure we can discuss this a little bit later. But very pleased to be here.
Thank you, Philippe. Yeah, trust is going to be a very big topic of today's discussion for sure. Sean, thank you very much, by the way, for coming so early. You're also in the US, so this is midnight, in the middle of the night for you, Cole. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And yes, I do have my coffee as well. So as you can see, I'm Chief Revenue Officer at Banks and one of the co-founders. We are a B2B2C provider of the building blocks for various banking related and payment services. So we work with NFT platforms, wallet providers, digital exchanges, providing things like fiat on and off ramps, physical and virtual cards. We work with MasterCard, Visa, China Union Pay, and the other building blocks, things like remittance and anything, the traditional banking functions, payments, virtual IBANs. We're a provider of those on a global basis.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go into the debate. So maybe just to frame the discussion, just maybe to 1 minute to explain you what WiseKey did. I mean, WiseKey is a Swiss cybersecurity company. We had done several acquisitions after we listed the company on the NASDAQ. And the idea was to, and I'm very much in what Philip was mentioned about, how can you convert analog trust into digital trust? What are the elements? What are the technologies that you need to bring organizations from the third industrial revolution into the fourth industrial revolution? And in that endeavor, we obviously learn a lot, and we also learn how to share efforts and share experiences with the multi-stakeholders. And so we engage with everybody. We engage with the World Economic Forum, with governments, with the United Nations, in trying to really bring collective thinking, right? As what I think is happening in NFT it's only the beginning and it's only the visible part of the iceberg. But what is happening now is that we are entering into a new generation of the internet, which is going to be more secure, more transactional, more decentralized, more accountable. And actually, we are at the genesis of that. So what we are doing is just reflecting that future potential that we know is there, but we obviously need to grasp it. So we launched, and I just moderated the first panel this morning, when we were discussing with the watch industry about what is NFT for them. And WISeKey did a world first with a watch, a Swiss watch from Jean-Claude Viver. And we learned a lot from that experience, because then we learned that basically NFT can satisfy two needs. One is moving a physical object to a virtual digital twin and do an NFT on it. Another one is going directly to the digital twin, but it still need to embed into that digital twin the digital provenance, and for that you need digital technology. So that experience concluded in basically the cooperation we have with all of you in this panel is how can we bring your collective technologies and effort and develop something like a platform effect. So maybe on that platform, and maybe we open the technology discussions with that. Maybe again, Chris, to start back to you. What is the need of a platform, and what the platform does that others don't do, and what are the key elements that you think this platform needs to have in order to be able to do high quality, high impact NFTs and move this forward to the big enterprise player, as Josh was just saying before. What is your views on that, on the platform effect, and maybe some descriptions of the platform, as they obviously we are working with the Casper Lab and Ocean Protocol. I mean, what are those pieces of the platform?
So the general platform functionality always has to depend on the use case, right? So it's going to be different when we have pieces of art and collectibles, or when we handle patents. But those are the features that we bring out to the users. In the back end, I think that there is two things that have not been done very well on a lot of platforms that come out to the user. Number one is we need to make sure that we can create closed communities. And I know saying this in the crypto world, right, where everything's supposed to be open and so on, seems counterintuitive, but I think that it's really important, because markets or specialized markets are closed communities. So if you are a baseball card collector, to say something not focus of any of the platforms that are present here, a lot of people will laugh at you because you're a grown man or a grown person, an adult, and you're doing things that kids do, right? So you don't want to be part of a community where people laugh at you. You need a closed community. And the same thing is true for people who are very rich, spending money on philanthropy or spending money on art. And the same is true if you're very engaged in social work. You want to make sure that the work gets done. So I believe that number one, you need to be able to have a closed community, and within this closed community, you have to be able to decide: do you disclose who you are, or you're staying anonymous? Right? This is important. The counterpart to this is that you need it, because we are talking about currency, we're talking about finance, right? It means that we have to make sure that we are not connecting these communities with the black market, that we're not connecting these communities with fraud, that we're not connecting these communities with criminal organizations, which means that we have to know your customer processes, and we need to have people get out of there. And this means that the platform has to run the KYC, but has to guarantee anonymity. That's the one thing on the platform. I think this is really important. The second thing is that we need to bring trust into the NFTs. So the NFT itself, the digital asset that is part of the NFT, that is minted into the NFT, needs to be sure that it really is exactly this digital asset. We need to have authenticity. We need to have a chain of authenticity, so that and this does not work digitally completely, right? We have to bring the trust world together with the non-trust world here. because otherwise we can't have digital twins. And this is the key technical part of this. And then I think that there's a few features that platforms should do today in order to be good citizens, which is we need to offset the carbon that is put into all the NFT minting and trading and thinking that we're doing, number one. And number two, we need to be able to perma-store things. We need to be able to store things permanently, because otherwise they are too fluid in the digital world, and they don't become like monuments like a lot of other things are in the world. It doesn't matter whether it's art or architecture or whatever. A lot of things in the real world are here to stay, and we need to make sure that these have in the same way. So I think there's 3 dimensions. There's what do we bring to the users? What do we need to do on the platform in order to make it a comfortable space for the users? And the third one is, what do we need in order to make this a sustainable activity and not just a hype?
Very good. Thank you very much, Chris. Actually, you raised a very interesting point, which is also a point the press is lately covering a lot, which is the energy consumption and environmental impact of NFTs. But who says NFT also says cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and everything around that. And this is actually one of the reasons why we selected to work with Casper, because their unique approach to sustainability and environment protection. So, but again, what are the, a lot of people will say, yeah, this is all only marketing. Ashok, what are the essential elements on where you guys are paying more attention than others and bringing these technologies in a sustainable way?
Yeah, and that's a very important point, Chris and Carlos, that you bring down, right? As we adopt this new technology and get this use case of non-fungible tokens widely into the markets, we have started with art, but we will eventually get into every day-to-day use cases, and maybe use cases that organizations like Oracle and Red Cross wants to solve. It's very important to really realize, and the younger generation is very conscious about it, right? Like, what is the impact that this technology is leaving on the environment? And if we did some back of the envelope calculations, and if you just look at the earlier blockchain technologies like Bitcoin is spending 95.5 trillion watt hours per year. Compare that with Ethereum of 33.5 trillion watt hours per year. And if you put that in context with what Casper running at 100 nodes will be consuming, it is 0.000175. So it's several thousand times more efficient, right? And it is important, as Chris brought out, that when we adopt a new technology and hand it over to the younger generations, we make sure that we also are aware of the impact that we are leaving on the environment, and what is the result of that, right? And as a proof of stake, layer 1 blockchain, we are very conscious of the impact, and what we are going to do about it is making sure that we continue to be efficient as we are.
Absolutely, and again, if we combine the need of sustainability, and then we look, for instance, what Oracle you are doing on enterprise and tokenization, how do you solve that problem as well? I mean, your focus is enterprise, blockchain, and helping enterprises to use you as a kind of one-stop shop where you provide to them a managed service, I figure out. So what is your view, Josh, on the role of Oracle as a major provider of this technology?
Well, first and foremost, I think as Oracle, we've at least acknowledged that blockchain is not a mainstream technology yet, but it's a data management technology which I believe will probably 50 to 20% of transactions around the world at some time will run over some sort of blockchain network. So I think it's an important data management platform to be. Well, we still run mainframes. They're still there, and they will be outphased, and we name all the servers, whatever. And I think blockchain is going to be this this new platform, which there will be a lot of traffic around. So I think it's important to understand exactly what's happening in the space, particularly for enterprises. And just mentioning on thing of the platform ID is exactly what we are looking into, is because if you're looking at NFTs, also FTs could be NFTs, and you're looking at things like digital twins, it also needs almost like a digital financial twin as well. So it need to be the systems. It need to be connected to account-based systems as well. If you want to do this in the virtual world, you need also to connect to what exactly a lot of companies are running on. So we're looking into how can we provide this technology in a secure way, first and foremost. I think that's for sure. I think that's what our customers are looking for, and in a very scalable way. And I'll come to the sustainability part of that, but particularly also in an integratable way, which I think is different from interoperability, but integratable with existing systems. So make sure that what you do as well on the blockchain can be linked, and of course, if today we're talking about NFTs, also those assets need to be accessible or need to be represented in other account-based systems for depreciation, etc., all kind of accountable. So I think that's an interesting part where we're looking into as such. And particular thing from our side, what we've done, we have a managed service. We can also run it on-prem, but I think our key proposition is the managed service, which we run from our data centers. And to the sustainability point, it's not using proof of stake or as such, so it's not it's a Hyperledger Fabric based. So that's one point. But I think as well what we've done is we're trying to maximize the number of transactions which you can run on what we call the data center CPUs. So it just runs on data centers which by themselves, all our new data centers are carbon neutral. So that's the way that we try to contribute to just to actually blend it in with our other cloud operations and make them as sustainable as possible. So it doesn't add actually on, except from the fact, of course, that all over the world, globally, we're using more data centers because we're using more cloud services. But it's not an extra, not an extra on whatever gas or whatever mining you need to do to get there. So I think that's our take on it. And I think, as mentioned, I think what's very keen for us as well is the link, exactly the digital twin, the link between physical and virtual world. Whether you're talking engineering assets, when you're talking financial assets, when you're talking IP monetization, a lot of companies are looking for how to implement that and how to make use of it. And we provide the bridge, I think, between the existing enterprise systems and blockchain with our platform, which actually is a permission blockchain, but we're looking, of course, very much in how the permissioned world can work with the permissionless world. I think that's where it all comes together.
Thank you very much, Josh. I'll come back later to you with the enterprise part, because I think this is a very important point in order to scale this up. Amir, in order to make a successful NFT auction, and we just had in the previous roundtable a representative from Philips, right? And we also had RNet, which are both of them kind of competition, because one is a traditional auction house, the other one is a art technology platform. One of the key points was the liquidity provider. How do they enter into the market? How do you look for them? Who are they? What is the process of building liquidity provision for a successful NFT?
Thank you, Carlos, for this question. This is a very interesting and multidimensional question. I think Ralph will also be able to talk a lot about the liquidity providers, the blockchain community, the different segments within this space. So if we take a look at the first research made in this area, Nick Szabo wrote 1997, the God Protocol. So there he was exploring a way to make trusted third parties obsolete by having a mathematically trustworthy protocol, which ultimately outsources all of the functions the trusted third party would do, for example, liquidity provision or whatever, outside to a marketplace and to new participants. So this is, I think, a very interesting first thought. Now, if we talk about liquidity providers as a new actor within the platform economy, right? So why are they really interesting? First of all, we've got a very liquid market. We've got a high total value locked in the crypto space. And now the people are looking for, okay, where would we like to actually see our value or lock up our value for further exploration of blockchain projects which drive adoption, which maybe build and strengthen the link to physical goods and to digital goods. We're talking about digital assets, about fractional ownership. Me as a small student a few years ago who wants to buy one specific object, which is now accessible through an NFT. Wow, that sounds good, like a Patek Philippe watch. So this is a very interesting factor. But regarding the liquidity provider and the blockchain community, I think it's also very interesting to understand that there's a gamification they like. They're the collectibles, the NFT space. 50% of the market is collectibles. So for the liquidity providers, when we're talking about making collectibles, having different rarity levels, having a gamification process in it, maybe having an algorithmic generated NFT, right? Like with CryptoPunks and so on. Those are all interesting points. So to come back to your question, behind the liquidity providers, we've got a community which is heterogeneous. There is not the one, but there are different types of communities. I think which Ralph, as I say, knows better than me. We had very interesting discussions. And from innovative point, or from a new era, Industry 4.0, on the industrial level, over here, when we're taking a look at the liquidity providers entering this market, this is also a different dimension, I think, which is very interesting. And from pricing, they set a new price for an asset. So the market sets the price via the liquidity providers for an asset, because of the incentives the protocol will have for those people. For Bitcoin, it's the Bitcoin mining and the Bitcoins they receive, right? And depending on the incentives we set, the liquidity providers will have a different interest to set the value and the price for different products and like participate on that. So I talked about different points. And
it's good. It's perfect. I just wanted to guide the discussion towards a concrete case, like we have here the International Red Cross with us. So their views in the future might be that they want to raise funds through NFTs. So I just want to deep dive a bit more on that process. Maybe Ralph, you can complement the discussion. What will make a successful fundraising strategy for organizations like the Red Cross or the Vatican or the Louvre, or traditional organizations, and they have assets. Some of them, they are very emotional assets, historical assets. Those assets are sitting in their museums or data or data bunkers, and or even sometimes on paper, and suddenly they realize that there is a way for them to raise money. What will be your advice in the different IDO, DeFi, NFT, DAO, tokenization? How can you structure the discussion there?
Not an easy question, I have to admit, because it's also a little bit something new. You know, the blockchain sphere and community was or is also to a certain extent a pretty closed circle. Where the hyped topics, DeFi, NFT, and more the infrastructural topics are getting hot. We also need to consider the different sub interest groups in there. So we have also the Bitcoin maximalists, Ethereum maximalists, and people that think completely decentralized. You know, there with these parties, you will have certain effort to transform them also to ideas that involve real world organizations, corporations, etc., entering the market. And I think there also a good portion of publicity and community development is necessary, because at the end, everyone wants to, in the crypto space, wants to have as decentralized as possible. But at the end, they also appreciate mass adoption, because this drives also in general the crypto market. So it's bipolar, let's say. And if this messaging, I think, is incorporated in a careful way, considering also the baseline of these sub-communities and prerequisites, and emphasizing on the real world benefits, on the adoption, and what this kind of effect has kind of a flow back effect also to the general crypto space. I think this is an important step, but it's pretty new. So not many entered the space. So but I'm convinced that this is needed also for the space to get in general also more weight, more sustainability aspects, more reputational, more reputation also, because in the blockchain sphere there were cases where not so much clean business was done. I think everyone knows that. And projects that raised a lot of money didn't deliver over years, So it's an enrichment in general of the ecosystem, but it will be a merge, let's say, of classical methods also in fundraising. What you were directing your question at the beginning, and also understanding the crypto market itself, the mechanisms behind, and the subgroups to come up then with a tailored strategy. I think there is not one strategy where you can say yet, okay, you need to go that path. It's really an individual strategy you need to develop, from my perspective.
Is it okay to jump in quickly and ask Ralph a question?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Ralph, I mean, what you're saying is so interesting, right? And it was partly what I was trying to say before. Like, so far the crypto world is pretty separate, and it works pretty separately. Yeah. But am I right in the assumption that the crypto world also is a lot about fairness and distribution of funds properly? I've seen a lot about there's so much about community, right?
Yeah.
And the one big thing about fundraising for the real world, if we put it into the crypto world, is that in the real world, you auction off something like the Red Cross could auction off its original charter, which they would hopefully never do, right? But they could auction the NFT of the original charter, and it would be sold. In the real world, it would be gone then. That's a once-off money raise. But in the crypto world, we can build something that whenever it gets traded again, the Red Cross still profits from it. And I think that this notion of fairness, this notion of connecting things with its original root, where it came from, is that not a good part where we can connect these two worlds? Because that is something that the real world is entirely missing, and that is very anchored in the crypto world. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's not too often done so far. But yeah, if we have a simple example, for example, from a football player transfer, the original club still profits also in future when at future transfers, This is now, let's say, just something that came spontaneously to my mind, but I think it's definitely a mechanism that is very interesting also for the creating or owning party. That it's not only a one-time business, but that there is a certain participation also over time when the ownership changes. And yeah, that's definitely an interesting model. Maybe also very interesting for also high value objects. Let's say I wouldn't see that. Let's say for every object, maybe 100% suitable, but definitely also especially for high value objects and and objects that have not only a monetary value, but also the story behind, so also capturing a very special moment or situation or whatever. So yeah, both sided.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving to Sean. Sean, you started your career in traditional finance with Gemalto, MasterCard, banks, and then you move into decentralized finance, and then now you are in the middle of this ecosystem that we are just describing here. What has changed, and what is your experience on the thing that needs to happen in order to scale all this? Because as we have been seeing, this is still small in comparison to the traditional finance. How can we scale? Is that trust one of the elements? Is what Chris just say? Maybe your views on that, please.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And so we're seeing, I think, in the last few years that there's definitely a lot more demand. So we can see the early days of the hockey stick kind of curve. I think a few things need to really happen. One is, from a regulator perspective, there needs to be more regulation around what you can do in licenses and stuff. And I mean, banks hold a number of different licenses, but as the market develops, and as bigger players get in from governments, et cetera, there needs to be just more regulation so people will trust it more. I think even if you look at neobanks, people will use them when they travel, but they might not put their paycheck in it because there's not that level of trust. And so that usually takes like a generation. So I think we'll see over the next kind of 5 years that trust where people were native using digital banks and they've never actually gone into a branch. So they'll start trusting, and then the winners and losers, the ones who have the best security. And I think the most important thing is really that trust. I think that's something, a segment that you guys have identified. You need to know who you're transacting with, either that they have some kind of a certificate, whether it's a passport, like when you get into a country, or if you're moving a lot of money around, the bank still will call you. And they cut your phone number, and sometimes if it's a big enough transaction, you physically have to go into the bank. So until those level of trust happen in the digital world with some of the stuff you're doing, also some of the regulation, it's really not going to take off in a big way. And if you look at a lot of the decentralized stuff, I think what we're seeing is a migration from just DeFi, which is very interesting, to something more of a hybrid model, which is kind of DeFi with some centralized functions, maybe like centralized functions around, okay, who do you go for to say this is the person you're dealing with? And that can be either transparent, or it can be a certificate of some sort. But that trust element is very important, so you know who you're transacting with. And the other thing that Ashok and I think just mentioned is things around like the energy costs. And I think you can get people that can tweet saying, "Oh, I'm giving up Bitcoin because of energy costs," but you really, I think that's a knee-jerk reaction. I think what will happen is, prevailing heads, maybe calmer heads will prevail. Look, okay, there is a cost of that energy, but what is it compared to? Is it compared to getting into your car and driving to move to do a transaction at a bank, shipping something physical? You have to really look at the total energy cost. Also, I think probably Ashok and Juice are looking at, there's a lot of interesting things happening with layer 2s. Remember, Bitcoin is really only gained traction in 3 to 5 years. If you look at the early cars or even the early computers, they had a huge amount of energy. Now I've got more power in my phone than was on the Apollo 13 space mission. So the energy consumption and some of the interesting things happening in layer 2 will lower the costs. So I think the 3 main things that will really drive adoption is, one, the trust layer, so you know who you're transacting with. Whether it's a small or big transaction, some of the regulatory, but also I think just better understanding of what DeFi and what crypto and what blockchain is. And those 3 things, as they come together, will really drive mass adoption. And we can start to see that as governments, Chinese governments, Swedish government, they're starting to do things on blockchain. A lot of the big banks, MasterCard has been doing blockchain type transactions. Some of the early projects I did back in the 90s, some of the first e-wallets in 1990. So that technology is just kind of making it to the front, the consumer side, but it's been used, tokenization has been used in the back end of MasterCard and some of these big systems for over a decade now.
And to piggyback, so I think the adoption is clearly I think we're talking about NFTs and talking about collectibles, which is, I think someone said, is 50% of the market, and that already says that that market is definitely not mature. You know, it shouldn't be 50% of the market. That shows as well there's a big potential for what I would say probably regular, maybe more controlled things that you would like to run over this as well. And when we're talking about I think fair business, also like imagine that you could not just fundraise something, but you could participate, of course, in agricultural engines. And that's kind of things that could be written off, could be financed in a way. I think that's a world which is open for us here, which then of course need to be connected to exactly to those systems that make to prevail, whether these are KYC systems or account-based systems, to make sure exactly that this is done in a proper way, and the World Bank, signs off for those kind of stuff. I think that's important that we look into that space if we want the market to adopt this and to the enterprise to adopt this, and then itself that I think also will cleans out some of the hot air which is in there, because people then can relate it to what they have been doing for years. And exactly like, with the first computers and the MasterCard and stuff, we have been doing these things in different ways. We have been doing payments in different ways already for digital payments for a long time. It's just to understand exactly the pitfalls that need to be prevented from, because the technology itself is trustworthy enough. I think everyone in this call probably believes in that. It's more the public or even the corporate trust in proving the trust what we're looking at to and that's the kind of the step we have to take, that we take normal use cases that people recognize and that they can see that the technology just fits in as a glove in there and helps exactly to speed up. And as Sean said, exactly, to be honest, if you're worried about Bitcoin consumption, think about what you're doing on other, energy consumption at all. And if you're exactly driving down to, you don't have to drive down to a bank branch anymore, which saves you a lot, of course, cost and energy as well. So I think it's a different perspective. But the key thing is exactly, let's bring it into what people would recognize as their normal way of life. And then it will gain trust by itself as well, the technology itself. Technology is trustworthy enough. And we as technologists, we need to make sure we stay ahead of those who would like to hack the trust. But I think it's the conception of trust that we need to change.
Yeah, and the definition of trust, because I worked in the UN for 16 years, and my job was actually part of it is to fund technology projects. So we have to go to donors and present the project, and it was a very time-consuming. And if I had cryptocurrencies or NFT at that time, I would have been so much more efficient in my work. So when Philip, you started the discussion talking about trust, the ICRC cannot impose, but can be trusted. And by being trusted, that's what makes your work more efficient. But you are subject to getting donors to fund your activities, and some activities needs to be well known by donors before they can fund it. And maybe donors sometimes wants to have accountability on how this money has been used and so forth. So I really believe NFT is a clear solution for that, because it is decentralized, provides accountability, it is transparent, it uses a KYC compliant process to know where the money comes from and so on. Can you build something with this technology? What is your views on that, on concrete applications? So
I think for us, it's still we are still at the level of exploration. It's somehow a system that is well in place, and I think we always are ready to be disrupted. But we want to first know, in terms of the responsibility, I think there is something which the ICRC is pretty clear. We don't want to test on people because of the people we work for. So we want to explore first and see how the market and how the different technologies interact and what could be the consequences. But clearly there is this element of trust, but also of accountability towards the donors, as you mentioned, but towards the people themselves. So there is this element that blockchain and the different technologies that are available here offers a field of possibilities that could match with this desire on our side to be much more transparent, accountable, predictable also. And the way we work is definitely changing in that direction. I can give you a few examples, and we might be the oldest humanitarian organization in the world. Doesn't mean we still continue to do the work we were doing 150 years ago. And we see a big shift in the way we work, not only in terms of processes where we have to adapt to new technologies, where we are using digital means for our work, such as digital identity, the cloud, and all this kind of support that helps to make our work faster, better, but also people themselves. And not everywhere around the world, but we see more and more a request for connectivity. And sometimes the first question people ask us is not where can I get food, it's where can I get Wi-Fi? And this is a big game changer for us. We might stop distributing food. I'm not sure, but I'm a bit exaggerating, but we might become a hotspot provider in the near future. But this comes with a lot of, as I said, responsibility. The people we work for are in situations of vulnerabilities, and we have strong ethics, such as a strong data protection. The data we collect, if they go and are ending in the wrong hands, can have huge consequences. It's almost life and death consequences for people. So we have to work with this ethical question. And therefore, again, here, having something which is traceable, something that could be viewed by everyone as this is our way of protecting the data, this is the way we spend money, or simply this is the data that is owned by the ICRC, don't attack it. The same way you put on a hospital a big Red Cross and people know it's a Red Cross, they should not attack it. And this is part of the Geneva Convention. Maybe in the future we'll have a Red Cross emblem or something on data in servers, but certified through a blockchain process or something like that. 3-4 years ago, we had an interesting initiative called White Flag, which was done together with the Dutch Army and Capgemini, where we wanted to know how we could certify the fact that someone was raising a white flag during a battle in the virtual world. And we use blockchain. It was a very interesting and metaphysical experience, I have to say, because the picture behind me here is still what we do. So I'm trying to anticipate was something which was difficult. But yeah, coming back to the question of fundraising, there is a clear need for us to understand where the money comes from. This is a no-brainer. We have very strict rules in terms of getting money. We can't get money from weapon manufacturers, for example. There is a huge list of money, so the capacity to trace where the money comes from, but also, as I said, way people want to know how we spend the money, to whom it goes. We do a lot of cashless cash, for example, and these are the things where I can imagine in the near future these two worlds connecting. Now, finally, to answer your question about our assets and how we can potentially sell them through NFTs. It's an interesting question. I think there are a lot of, again, ethical questions. To which extent we want to sell the 4-piece Nobel Prize we won over the past 100 years. I'm not sure, but we can try to explore. I don't know if there is a market for that, but why not also trying to anticipate? Why not selling through an NFT, an artificial leg that will be produced or given to a young Afghan in Kandahar, for example, and you're part of the whole project. Maybe it's less for you to invest and gain money later on, but it makes sense and connects to a cause.
Yeah, absolutely, Philip. Actually, I believe that you have a huge case for NFT monetization, not necessarily selling the original, but selling the digital twin of whatever emotional. Yesterday was announced that Tim Lee is selling the NFT of the code of the web, the initial code that he wrote in Geneva in the CERN. And Chris is conducting now the NFT sale for that. So I think we can NFT everything. And I think NFT is a unique opportunity for humanitarian organizations to solve critical problems. I mean, later today, I'm going to be moderating another panel on health and security with experts from COVID and health experts. And the conclusion is that the post-COVID world is accelerating the issues, and they were already defined by the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals. People are getting more poor. Food is getting not distributed as efficient as before. We have no more access to water. I mean, we are really in a post-pandemic reality, which requires humanitarian organizations and international agencies to use whatever they can in order to become more efficient. And this is obviously a huge opportunity. And this is a technology that has attracted the interest from donors. I know that donors also want visibility in what they are doing. They want to tell the world, look, I am providing that specific support. And sometimes there's a much better publicity and positive publicity if they do by acquiring an NFT, which, by the way, becomes then an asset as well. So I think we're going to be seeing a huge transformation in the humanitarian in the sector with this technology. So we are 5 minutes to go, but go ahead, Ralph, please.
Just a very short one. I just wanted to bring also to Philippe, let's say, also a second dimension. One is, let's say, selling an NFT, but which is also a little bit complicated, I think, in your case. But the other thing is using NFTs as incentives, let's say. So just brainstorm. You have a platform, where the users in a little gamified way collect karma with donations and whatever, but also with physical activities, participating in events, organizing stuff, they can collect karma, the Red Cross karma, and the ones that reach certain thresholds, they get unique NFTs, Red Cross NFTs, which they use, hey, I can showcase that I reached that level, So I see minimum the same potential also in these kind of NFTs where you don't use it as a direct fundraising vehicle, but more as an incentive vehicle. So I think there are also these kind of opportunities out there where NFTs can be used very well.
Interesting.
So, yeah, absolutely.
We try to get into Fortnite as we had a special edition which was a little bit outside the classic one. In this mode, you were not allowed to kill people because that's a little bit the spirit of the Red Cross. But why not? Indeed, in the game when you are rewarded with different skins and so on, we could imagine that. Thanks, Ralph, for this idea.
Yeah. So we are nearly closing. So what I would like is maybe just 1 minute each of you guys to just conclude some conclusive notes and some recommendations for the future. So maybe we start with Chris. Just 1 minute each, please, and then we conclude. Chris, or I don't know if Chris is.
Oh, you were. Sorry, I was still muted. I thought I wasn't. So I think that the interesting part that we saw here, right, is that especially the combination between real world and crypto world, there's many things to be done. I believe that we will see a few platforms pop up that use the infrastructure, the good infrastructure that has now been built in the crypto world, in order to promote completely new approaches. I mean, we've discussed collectibles, we've discussed charity and philanthropy. We have very shortly touched stuff like patents and international organizations, all of those things. I believe that there is so much speculation in this world, and all the topics that we have discussed here are very grounded. I'm super optimistic that we will see a much more solid development, and that we actually get to use the opportunities that are in the crypto world now. So for me, this discussion was totally different than from what I expected, and I'm super happy, and especially what Ralph is saying on how to combine these two. I'm very positive. Much better than I expected.
That's a good thing. And by the way, I also have more time. I was told, and the panel can continue a few minutes more, so we have time to elaborate or final idea. Ashok, maybe just final conclusion. Also, you didn't say anything about your concrete activities, things that you are doing, which are many, I know. Maybe you can say something about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and love to. Just a comment before I move on to that. I love in the panel when you have somebody who's not just coming from the technology world, and I can see that Felipe coming from Red Cross, the kind of interaction and the value that it's an enriching experience to have non-technical but interesting use cases being discussed, and that's kind of gateway to it. So thank you, Felipe, for bringing in that aspect. So coming back to Casper Labs, right? And I heard Chris talking about KYC and AML, like anti-money laundering requirements, and this is not only just our own conscious that we want to do it, but this is also a regulatory requirement, right? So we want to make sure that we have that, and so Casper has been integrating with WiseKey now and others to make sure that we have that available on chain. It means that if a person is bidding in an auction or trying to buy or sell an NFT, they will have to be KYC certified, and you can check if that is true or not. So the smart contract can now ensure that we meet these regulatory requirements. The second aspect that is interesting is NFTs as collectibles in digital art. It's a very, very interesting use case. But where the rubber really hits the road is when you have the interactions with real world use cases, and that's patents that we talked briefly about. So we are working very closely with IPV and IBM to bring in tokenization for patent and patent management. That's a very, very interesting use case. From this end, and I have another very diverse kind of an example where we are working with a company called Metacask, who's bringing in single malt whiskey barrels as NFTs, and imagine ownership of those. It's you see the diversity in the applications, right? Also, Sean, maybe interest for you is working with financial instrument, bundling of financial instruments as NFTs and securitization. So these are very diverse NFT applications. We just demonstrate that in just a few years, the technology has gone into so many different areas, and it's going to be, as the panel kind of brought out, right, and it's going to be increasingly getting into our day-to-day lives. And I am sure, in the next generations to come, it will be very, very deep impact on their day-to-day life. And it's great to be in the forefront of this technology, kind of driving some of those things which will last generations, right?
Very good. Thank you, Ashok. Absolutely, I agree. Maybe a final word from Ralph.
Yes, I think also a lot of the factors were discussed. What's also necessary for real adoption. Maybe one thing I would add, UI UX. So this is also a topic for me where a lot of platforms, applications are still lacking, let's say, this a suitable UI UX that is also that makes it also possible for mass adoption. So I think this is also a topic to address in future, that it's not only, let's say, graphically or from the user experience, but also accessibility, let's say, of applications, and putting the tech a little bit more in the background. The less you have to deal with public keys, the less you have to deal with if I send that now, it could, and I send it to the wrong thing, it's gone. And I think Casper Labs, I think you integrated that recovery function as one of the first protocols inside, right? So if you, because normally if you do that on other protocols, you're sending it to the wrong address, it's gone, So it's more or less burned if no one is owning that wallet. And there are also protocols go now new ways like Casper Labs and having kind of a recovery thing. And this is also then, these are the steps that create also that level of trust, which then getting into a bank grade level in future. And I think this is then also one additional piece for real mass adoption, but all the rest was already discussed.
Yeah. May I just add to that then? I think obviously mentioned UI UX, but I also see another trend actually is try to embed it, without the UI UX. Because I think that's eventually for a lot of technology, what's the best technology when you don't see it, when it just works. Yeah. So I think it's interesting to see how can we use this, for example, in parts and document tracking using existing systems. And then on the back end, it's done whether you use APIs, whatever you want to use, but likely it runs in the back end and it gives the results of a trusted part or a trusted action or transaction. I think that's, when we're talking mass adoption, that's where I would see mass adoption coming along. When people would see it as a component that's been plugged in, and it delivers value because it delivers the trust and authenticity from the technology. So I do see the UI UX thing, but I also see a different area, and exactly is just embed the technology. And I think that's another area where we haven't really looked into it very much. But I think that's where mass adoption will. That's where you will see. That's because that's very replicable. Once it's done, and in manufacturing or in aviation, you just in automotive, you just can take it on, and that's for example, we're working with some of our partners exactly looking at this for big assets that move around. Well, there's a world to gain there, and you don't need a good UI UX for that, but you need solid technology to embed and to embrace the integration of those two new worlds.
Yeah, and that integration actually is exactly what WiseKey and working with you guys are doing. As we always started from the digital identity vision, and everything needs to have its own digital identity, and this digital identity should be owned by the person in case of a person, or by the device as a birth certificate of the device, and then you create an authenticated ecosystem, and then once you do that, you can facilitate and integrate all kind of processes. So that's the drive. I think having people like Philippe with concrete cases and this is why we invited Philippe. At the beginning, Philippe was more or less, well, what are you going to do in this roundtable, right? When we first discussion, but actually it creates a huge value for us as a technologist, because it put us in a problem-solving attitude where we can now, with the technologies we have, with the advice that Ralph gave, and this interaction brings some kind of very concrete applications. The technology is there. It has been there for a while. Is the integration and application of that technology is lacking. So yeah, just a few words from you, Sean, please, as the concluding words.
Yes, thank you. It's very interesting to see that very large companies and big organizations are starting to adopt the building blocks. And, I know it's still very early days. Banks has always seen ourselves as kind of that bridge between the fiat and the crypto world, and we're very encouraged to see some of the really strong organizations thinking about it, and I know there'll be much better use cases coming in more more real world use cases as we get better at this. And we're focused on the technology, but I'm sure there's other people figuring out, like Philippe, on how to actually use our tech to make the world a better place. And that's very interesting for us.
Very good. Thank you very much. Amir, some final words?
Thanks a lot. So first of all, great discussion, many interesting thoughts. So looking forward to new talks together. Now, when taking a look at the next events happening, also the tech token, the WiseArt platform coming up, I've got like two takeaways. One time, the melting pot attitude. They're merging the traditional world of like art, collectibles, and luxury goods together with the community of the crypto and their understanding of art, collectibles, and luxury goods. So this is one very interesting narrative, which I think we've already included very nicely. The second part of the green NFT, of the green technology, right? So me personally, like the discussion about Bitcoin having too much energy consumption is for me ridiculous. Of course, there have to be solutions to be that, there's no doubt. But if we compare that, we've got a technology now which allows every human being on the world to have access to a financial system, and the energy consumption it takes compared to the banking energy consumed on the whole world for the buildings and so on. So this is one part of the discussion. The other part of it is that we have the responsibility to have green technology. This is why I think it's very interesting that the WiseArt NFT platform will not only have 0.08 energy consumption less than, for example, what Bitcoin has, or Ethereum even might have, but actually will be CO2 neutral, because there will be a solution basically with CO2 certificates on and off line, so to say, which will allow to offset the remaining 0.08 energy consumption, because of course, the green technology and the ecological change, which we all have to tackle together, is very important. Yeah, but not to blame Bitcoin too much for that. Yes.
Absolutely.
So yes, that's it. And I'm looking forward also to the Scale Swap IDO happening next week. So this will also be an interesting event, following with interesting project like some of what we are providing. So thanks a lot for your time over here.
Thank you, Amir. Your help is amazing also. So yeah, just to expand on Amir, so the WiseArt platform, which is going to be an NFT platform, is going to be released in July. Our approach is sectorial approach. So we did the world first of Dublo watch. Then we did a $1 million NFT with Jacob watch, which was a physical watch. Then we did several major paintings. Actually, something is going on now with the colonial art in the United States, which is around $2-3 million NFT. We are looking into NFT with international organizations. Good news is that Geneva is full of them. So you have WIPO sitting on intellectual property. All the patents of the world, they are registered in Geneva. So it is our objective to launch NFT on patents. Patents and IP protection is a massive sector. We're working with museums, we're working with the Vatican on trying to unleash all this NFT potential that is now stored in boxes, and they need to fundraise. So those are projects that are going to be announced gradually as we move forward. We also launch a trustee coin, we call it, which is a cryptocurrency, which includes a full NFT compliance. So we are handling like any bank will do it by providing KYC compliant processes for clients that they want to enter and use the crypto coin. So we are working with Casper Lab, Ocean Protocol. All of you guys actually are part of this endeavor, also with Sean. And our objective is continue creating case studies sector by sector on how NFT could basically disrupt and transform organizations, and they are still maybe a bit in the analog world. So that's a very good incentivation, because this is not a cost issue. It's not like selling technology and you have to buy millions of dollars before you deploy. This is actually a business proposition. The organizations can make money at the same time that they are disrupting themselves. And again, you know, Switzerland is full of them. FIFA for world soccer, the Euro, UEFA is here. Just the French national team announced NFT last week. So this is happening. It's NFT of everything, right? And we want to be the team that makes this revolution happening. So just Philip, just maybe you are the final word before we close. Anyway, we are here to assist you in whatever capacity you might need. We are also we're not far away as we are in Geneva. So maybe just final conclusion, and then we will close this panel.
Yeah, no pressure on me to close such a rich discussion, but yeah, thank you very much. It's enriching indeed to connect different worlds, and that's indeed part of my endeavor work over the next few years. Just to give you examples of where we try to go, we even are discussing the possibility to have a so-called virtual or a delegation, an office in cyberspace, just to test these different technologies to understand how they work and how in the future the war will be fought. We all saw all these different attacks on supply chain, on hospitals, and we can imagine that the future is going to be very cyber, also with conflicts and war, and the question of how the people will face these different blockages in real life, but also in the virtual world. One day, if your identity is stolen and used by someone else, or if you are denied different accesses to certain documents or certain services, these are the worries and the anticipation we try to come up with. So yes, thank you very much for this discussion, and looking forward to continuing engaging with all of you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank also Palexpo for this amazing idea on Trust in Innovation Summit, which is an extension of a very successful 2 edition of the Blockchain Congress that happened before COVID, and this year is virtual. But I just congratulate them again, because I think trust is going to be, as it was in this panel, and is going to be more and more a recurrent topic that is going to be maybe the main connector between the analog physical world with the digital world. I think the trust is the energy that will make those worlds working together. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sean, Ashok, and Ralph, for working in the middle of the night. I know how hard that is. I'm sure you're going to dream about NFT for the next hours to come. And we wish you all the best, and we look forward to being in contact with all of you. Bye, guys.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Oh,